everyone. Welcome to the All Things Good podcast. I'm your coach and your host, Giovanna Cirillo. Today, we are going to be talking about resilience within the work field. If you're a woman, if you have a business, if you're looking to launch a business, this episode is for you. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Lorraine Kingcannon, and she has been a strategist, a public relations strategist for over 15 years. She's a community advocate, she's a speaker, and today she's going to bless us with her wisdom, her knowledge, and also the challenges that she faced within the business world as a woman. Please help me by welcoming Lorraine Kingcannon. Welcome, Lorraine. How are you today? Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, Giovanna. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on your platform, and I'm happy to share with your audience.
Awesome. So I've already gave a brief introduction of who you are. Tell us, Lorraine, how exactly did you come into the business world? How was that?
Coming into the business world started pretty early for me. As I started reflecting on your question, I was thinking, how far do I want to go back? And I was like, let me just give it to them. So I actually was raised in the family of a legendary gospel band called the Kingcannon family. So the music business was a primary source of income in my family. So I was, aware of business from that aspect very early. And then my great grandfather was the first black man in his area to have a trash company. So he was the man that would go around and collect everybody's trash and get their money. And if they didn't pay their money for the month, they didn't get their trash picked up.
Okay.
Yeah. Then also, my mom was a cosmetologist, so she had a business in the cosmetology space. And at about 13 years old, I started my first business because I would braid hair for my friends in the community, and I would get my little, pocket change and things like that. So I actually was exposed to business pretty early, entrepreneurship, self-sufficiency, and I moved into that as an adult. 18 years old, I had my first business as a janitorial business, a cleaning business.
Okay.
Wow. And then I just have, been a serial entrepreneur from there.
That's amazing. Starting at 13, 14, that's a really good age to start. I mean, at 13, 14, I'm thinking I started working at 16 and, made stupid mistakes, didn't save any of my money. And just looking at your backgrounds, it's so important to have that background of business because you picked it up. It was like, you know what, I'm picking this up. They're teaching, you were learning, and I love that. I really love that. So how exactly did you get into the public relations department?
As I said, being in a family, that was in the music business, I always saw that world of PR and all that in operation. And I put out a gospel album as, a gospel rapper in about 2013-ish. But I saw there was a deficit for, PR to represent people of color. Okay. In the media. And I saw that it was a lack of PR in the underground world or the indie music world. And so I became very inspired to help folks in my community with public relations. And that is how I got into PR. I got my degree in 2010 from University of Texas at Arlington. So that is actually when I graduated from college. Actually, in my internships, I was already doing some PR work for nonprofit organizations. And then after I graduated, I pretty much continued to freelance and hold down my 9 to 5.
Okay. That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. So as a female business owner and with all the experience that you have from you were younger to your age now, have you ever been treated a specific way because you were a female?
Well, I come from a strong line of matriarchs. Actually, let me give a shout out to my mother, Maria Kingcannon McFadden, and my father, Prince McFadden. Today is their anniversary. I want to give a shout out to them. I want to give a shout out to my Aunt Marty Hawkins, First Lady Marty Hawkins in Denver, Colorado, and my sisters. Shout out to Bonnie B, the real Bonnie B on social media. So I just come from a long line of strong matriarchs.
Hmm.
And being able to, first, I think if you want to go into business, charter the waters where you're accepted,
Okay.
because that helps you build your confidence to where when you go in those environments where you're challenged based on your gender or your race, you have your, not only your credentials, but your track record of your skills and your references to say, well, if you're doubting me, call so and so person. If you think
Okay.
I am not capable, look at what I did for so and so person. And I found a lot more grace among my community, and more specifically the community of women that I worked with early on.
Okay.
You know,
So, mhm.
so the challenges when I faced them, okay, back to your question, when I faced the challenges, I was able to let it roll off. Like I could let it roll off so quick because I just think I was very confident.
Mm.
And you have to be confident in yourself in the business world.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? You have to always, like what I do, cancel. Every time I hear negativity in my mind, I say it out loud, cancel. I cancel,
Mhm.
you know. And yes, so the biggest challenge I think is the imposter syndrome.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? And that is why you need all of that history behind you and that support behind you, because when you have that, you can draw from that. And you can remind, when imposter syndrome comes upon you, you can say, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And keep your raving fans list, and that'll help you power through that.
That's amazing. I love that you mentioned that you came in with confidence. I think
Yes.
that's amazing, especially for any female looking to launch anything. Knowing who you are, standing strong on who you are and what you have set out to accomplish.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times, imposter syndrome can come along and say, "What are you doing? No, you're not good enough. You're not qualified." All these lies, and having that affirmation, like just reminding yourself, because sometimes we have to remind ourselves we can't look for validation outside of ourselves, because outside of ourselves we would probably never ever find it. You might have a strong background from your mother, from your family, maybe some friends, but when they're not around, you have to have that confidence to continue to go. Like, even as a podcaster, I'm listening to you speak, and I had to really ground myself in who I am, because everyone will have an opinion of what they believe I should go, the direction that I should go in. But because I know who I am and I know what God has called me to do and the direction I'm going in, I can be confident in that and not allow self sabotage or the imposter syndrome to come in and try to stop me. So I love that you just stated having that confidence, and it's good to have a support system as well, because a lot of people don't always have a support system. How can you give advice to people who don't have a support system?
When you don't have a support system, it is your responsibility to build that support system. There is a scripture that I refer to all the time. It says, if you want friends, show yourself friendly.
Mm.
If you want to build a community, it starts with you. You know, we cannot expect folks to just come up to us and greet us and introduce themselves to us and welcome them on our platform if we have this exterior
Mm.
that is not welcoming to people. You get what I'm saying? So it really starts with you to make yourself presentable as a friendly person.
Right.
First of all, as a warm person, as a giving person, because authenticity goes a very long way, and people are starting to realize more and more, pick it up pretty quickly when people are just out to, they're not being real and they're just trying to get something. You know what I'm saying? So it all starts with you to build a community. Community is all around you. it may look different for different people. Some communities may be your immediate family.
Mm.
Some community may be your extended family. Other community may be friends. And I say friends are the family members you choose.
Right.
And then it can go even further in terms of your community being where you do business, your neighborhood, where you work. So school, church,
Mm-hmm.
your professional career, you can develop communities in those spaces. But to answer your question, community starts with you. If you want friends, show yourself friendly.
That's a good, I like that key point. I like that advice because we can often come across as very, as loners. We can
Yeah,
come across as, we have it all together. And, it's good to have that mindset where we don't need anyone, but in reality, we do, right? It's when someone is first starting a business, I think it's important. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not fully, knowledgeable when it comes to the business world. But when you
sure.
first start launching a business, you want to make sure that you have the things that you want to be set in stone, the direction that you want to go in, the vision, the layout. And then from there, you're choosing and you're fellowshipping, you're communing with people who you would like to be a part of that journey with you. So it's not just I feel like there's a healthy balance between knowing who you are and going for it regardless of who you're with, but also looking, attracting, praying, calling in those people who are called to run alongside you in this business world because it can get lonely, it can get stressful, and it's good to have someone alongside of you.
Absolutely, Giovanna. Absolutely. There was a saying that I have for a while, and it's let your network, no, I'm sorry, it says your network will work for you.
Mm.
Eventually, your network will work for you. Okay. So last weekend, I'm sorry, I sat on a panel with someone who really inspired me, Jay Holland. Shout out to Jay Holland. He's considered Jay Prince of South Dallas. If anybody knows who Jay Prince is, he's a very influential person in the entertainment community. And so Jay Holland is uh, in South Dallas here, and he just won the Lifetime Achievement Award from the president. And we sat on a panel together. And I want to give him a shout out because he said something. He said, let your prayers and your network work for you.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying? At the end of the day, our network is our net worth.
Right.
What I'm saying? So if you think you can do this by yourself, that is a fallacy.
Mm.
That is a fallacy. No one can do life alone.
Right.
No one can do life alone. And that is something I feel the generation today, especially men, young men, are suffering from loneliness.
Mm.
Behind their computers, they're behind their video games, and they're not really getting out, interacting with young ladies. They're not really getting out, interacting with other young men around them. They're not playing sports or any of that. So you have to have a network, network at all costs because people are your most essential asset. I
Mm.
tell folks all the time, do you know that what do you call it? Relationship capital.
Mm.
You may not have money all the time. You may not have access to get in certain doors, but you may have a person in your network that can get you in those doors.
Right. Right.
So I hope I kind of you know, answer what you were saying.
Oh, you definitely did. You guys,
Okay.
we need a community. We need a network. We can't just do this by ourselves,
Sure.
especially if you're looking to run a business. Definitely, you definitely answered the question. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So, in what ways was your character developed throughout this process, throughout learning from your parents, from your aunts, your uncles, and even, going out on your own and launching your own business? In what ways was your character developed?
And and it's always, I guess it's back to what I said about showing yourself friendly. If you want friends, I think what developed my character was when people were nasty and throwing shade, or when they didn't fulfill on obligations that they made to me. I didn't go and slander people. I didn't go on a tangent on social media, and talk about them bad. I didn't, I just, I never wanted to be a person that was ugly to other
Mm.
people. You know what I'm saying? Even being advanced in business, a lot of the times when I would go and help folks, they were just starting out, and I saw a lot of like bloopers, and I would be like, oh, I wish they had a little bit more help, because they were wearing all the hats and things didn't go according to plans and all, and so I just did my best to treat people with kindness, and I think that you are not tested until you put in a situation where somebody's ugly or they don't meet your standards, where how you're going to respond to folks.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest blessing of who I am today. Just being a person that is like, give people grace.
Mm.
You have to have a strong mind and a tender heart.
I like that. Yes, definitely a strong mind and a tender heart. And it's so funny that you say that I never wanted to be the person that's ugly. And I was just saying this to myself. I'm like, I don't ever want to become that person that just becomes so angry and bitter that, we're called to shed light. We're called to bring light, love, and
Mhm.
kindness into this earth, because that's what this podcast is all about, to be honest. It's really just shining light in a dark world. And I love that you mentioned that. So did going through the process, I know we spoke briefly on how you came about, how you started your business during the pandemic and the challenges that you faced. Were there any moments where you felt like your mental health wasn't the best? It sounds like you've been handling everything with grace. Were there any periods in your life where you were just like, this is just too much, nothing's happening? What were the challenges that you faced, not just in your character, but in, actually launching your business, success in your business?
Mental health wise, it has not always been easy. Out on the outside looking in, maybe how I look today, maybe how I'm speaking well today. People would think everything's all gravy all the time, and it isn't. There's times where I feel that, man, it's dry. I'm not getting any calls. I'm not getting any business. I'm not, attending the functions, and that can weigh on you as, am I not good enough? Do I need to step it up? Do they not see me? I feel invisible, and so I'm not always at my capacity when it comes down to, you know, mental challenges. I'm gonna say normal mental challenges. You get
Right.
what I'm saying? Because people have to realize that it is normal to feel angry. It is normal to be sad. It is normal to feel imposter syndrome. It's just when they go to the extremes, when you have to, get people medical treatment. So I always try to tell people, like, having challenges mentally is normal,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so when COVID-19 hit, um, and I was in my current business that I have, which is the PR strategist and project management, and also my nonprofit organization, where I work with teenagers who have been victims of gun violence, or I try to do preventative work for gun violence. We were primarily in person. We were primarily in person, and did not have a strategy in place to pivot really to online platforms or digital means of income. And that was tough for me because I had three teenage daughters as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
was a single mom, and I was trying to juggle everything. I was trying to juggle business, I was trying to juggle my personal life, and I was also trying to juggle their mental health.
Right.
So having three teenage daughters during the pandemic time of the economy's collapse, or whatever was, I don't know if the economy collapsed, but it struggled.
Right.
What I would do, Giovanna, is go to my car sometime and just break down and sob.
Mm.
You know, um, I didn't really do it in front of my daughters, although I encourage parents to be vulnerable in front of their kids. You know, um, when the opportunity presents itself. But I would just go to my car and I would break down and I would just boohoo and I would pray and I would just like speak the Bible out loud and all the things that, I grew up to believe and know from the Bible. And I would just talk to myself that way. And then I had a friend that I met during the pandemic. Well, we were friends. We just kind of reconnected. We would get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning and run, exercise, because we couldn't go into a lot of gyms, but where I lived, there was a lake and there was a track. And so we would get out and run and stuff. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was scary. It was a lot of things, but I do feel that the years of putting positive things in my mind, reading positive books, and already surrounding myself around with great people helped. So my point is, you can't wait till a storm to put tools in your toolbox.
Right.
Your tools must be in your toolbox just as proactive measures,
Right.
you know?
What I was
And
gonna say, it sounds like
yeah,
you're being proactive. Hmm.
yeah. And that definitely got me through COVID. I'm sorry, the pandemic. That got me through the pandemic. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. You
Okay.
explained the struggle that you faced. So the imposter syndrome came along. You started to, worry and think if there was anything going to happen with your business because it was dry. And you actually answered the next question was how did you cope? And so what I'm hearing is that you already had the tools within you and you just began to utilize them again. You began to
Yeah.
really affirm yourself, really get into prayer. You got active. And that's important for our listeners to know that in those moments where you feel like nothing is working, clients aren't calling, appointments aren't being booked, that you go back into that toolbox. You go back into what you remember about yourself. You go back into that place of identity to say, this is who I am. This is what I'm called to do. You remember why you started. A lot of the times I've seen business owners around me and they forget the why because either it becomes too chaotic, it becomes too stressed out, or maybe things aren't moving for them. And they forget the reason why they started the business in the first place. Was it their first love? Was it something that they wanted to do to make a difference? So, in that place of you having this business, if you're a business owner or if you're looking to get into a business, have that stability, have that foundation, whatever it is that you believe in, whether it's God, the Bible, the prayer, whether it's running, active, whatever you do to keep yourself grounded, make sure that you sustain these things so that when the time comes, if the time comes, you're prepared for that moment.
Yes, and I want to add to what you're saying because everything you said it simplifies what I said perfectly. And I want to add to what you're saying, the why. I had the why looking me in the eyes every day. The three
Mhm.
daughters that I talked about, and um, I don't put my kiddos in public and things like that because they're not public figures, So I try not to. I try to respect their privacy. But I had six eyes looking at me every day, and
Mhm.
they were females, being females at that. So I really had something that I had to show them. I really had to show them strength. I had to show them survival. I had to show them mom, and I had to show them a root girl is what we
Mhm.
sometimes my family says. I had to show them that I was that person that they could look up to, and so when people say your why has to be more than money, if money was my why, the
Mhm.
way things dried up and I was going through my savings. If money was my why, I would have folded.
Right.
Because my why were the three daughters that I love so much, and that they were looking up to me. Um, I wouldn't have made it.
Right.
Okay? And one thing else I want to say is that overall, because I know people want to know, okay, you did all this mental stuff, but what about the money part? What happened with your finances and your business? So I honestly was not a uh, debt heavy business. I've never been a debt heavy business.
Okay.
Okay. I've
What does
always,
that mean?
okay. So basically what that means is that I didn't have a lot of debt, like loans, business loans. I didn't have, a lot of overhead expenses. I kept my expenses really low. I always learned that it was important to keep your expenses low and your revenue high.
Okay.
Okay. So then I had savings. So um I didn't owe a lot of folks. It was easy for me to downsize.
Okay.
It was easy for me to downsize. And I always believe that a lot of people want to look for money. Like banks give money to people who don't need it, honestly. So if you have a product or a service that is good, your money should come through that
Mm.
first, right? And then your bank loans and your grants and, you know, angel investors and all that should be next.
Okay.
Okay, so what ended up happening because of my network that I had in the business world, they began to share with me things that we could access as business owners. Okay, and but I was able to qualify for those resources, and
Okay.
those resources and they helped my business sustain financially.
Okay.
But it wasn't until those programs rolled out that I was able to get back on track. I was real close in my savings to exhausting me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but yeah, so I will highly suggest people do not live your life in debt
Mm-hmm.
because the borrower is slave to the lender. Okay, but say for instance, if you do get in a lot of debt, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Say if you do have to file bankruptcy, it's not the end of the world. You are not the first person that has done it, and you're not the last person that done it. Will do. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, if you ever find yourself in that situation, don't lose hope because there are ways out of everything. If you wake up, if you wake up, that means you have another day to fight to fight for your business and to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. Not going into the business world with too much debt. Try not to go in with anything at all. I mean, just thinking about that, it's stressful. No one wants that burden on them. And
No.
so having at least coming in with some type of preparation, I know that, there's that healthy balance of stepping out in faith, but also having wisdom and being prepared.
Yeah. 6 months of income saved up is usually what I tell people they should have before they start into business.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I wanted to go back because when you were talking about your why, I was just like, I was ready to like I don't know if you noticed, my eyes were tearing up and I got like chills all over my body. And it's only because you stated, first of all, you're a woman, you have kids that are also females looking up to you. And I could just imagine you wiping off your tears and it's coming in. The chills are coming again, wiping off your tears, strengthening yourself up to say, I have to keep going. Like I have to keep going. And I want our listeners to, I'm emphasizing this again because I feel like I need to. Your why is so important. And she even stated that your why should not be money. Your why should be the people around you. Your why should be the purpose of it all. What difference are you going to make with this business? I mean, we're all making a difference, whether you're a coach, whether you're a public relation specialist, whether you are someone in financing, whether you're someone who's building a brand or a product, we're all making a difference. We're contributing to this world. So focus on that why. Thank you so much for saying that because that is going to be a key for people, for women to continue going. to keep going for that dream. That, and then just thinking about how you just pursued your dream, you continue to go despite of anything, despite of the challenges. You had that determination and resilience to say, I'm gonna keep going. My kids are the reason why. Ah, so good. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I want to add to that. I've never had a plan B.
Mm,
I honestly, I've never had an option B. Um, Will Smith talked about this on one of his conversations. Like I picked it up. He said, when you have a plan B, you just planning to fail. I don't know, something to that effect. But I
mm,
told my daughters, my plan is to be a business owner. My plan is to be a businesswoman. My plan is to be respected as a businesswoman. And now that my kiddos have entrepreneurial ambitions, I tell them every day, that's your plan A, you run with it
right.
at all costs. And so I have daughters who are walking in my footsteps.
I love that.
They're doing it, and I'm very proud of them. And what I'm proud of more is the knowledge that I have accumulated um, for these times. I've been able to pass it down to them because the younger they start, the better.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? And so I would tell your viewers, get plan B out of your mind.
Mm,
Do all that it takes to now in plan A, you may have to expand. You may have to create other branches off of plan A, but that doesn't mean it's a plan B. You get what I'm saying?
okay.
Uh, what's your plan B if your music career doesn't work out? Are you need to go to college and become a nurse or something like that? That's what I'm talking about. You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
if you have, yeah, plan A is the way to go because you're going to live with regret. You're going to live with regret if you do not pursue what it is that you were passionate about.
Right. And you know what? I find that somewhere along the lines, like God always brings us back to that plan A. We can
Mm-hmm.
try as much as we can to stray away from it, but when we look back to look at the journey and say, I've been trying to get away from this, but it's been calling me for so long. It's just
Mm-hmm.
really never so just having that strong foundation to say, plan A, like I'm sticking to it, regardless of what it looks like, how long it takes. I'm sticking to it because usually plan A is your purpose. It's
Yes, and then on plan A, you meet the wonderful people that you meet. Shout out to Scar City, a Scar City music group. Because of me staying on my purpose, I met Scar City. And then from meeting Scar City, I was introduced to you.
right, right,
And it's almost like I feel strongly. If I wouldn't, I don't coincidence anything away in life. If I wouldn't have stayed on my path, I wouldn't have met you all.
exactly right.
So, like you said, God will keep on bringing you back to it, even when you try to get off and veer away. He will keep bringing you back to it.
Right. I love that. I love that. So, all right. So, we spoke briefly about the pandemic. I don't know. I can't say that I know what's going on, but there's been talk that we might be going into another recession. I don't know. I don't pay too much attention to that. Maybe you do, but I don't. What can someone do who has a business, right? And it's in the early stages of launching, and then suddenly a pandemic hits. What can a business owner do to prevent, not necessarily they can't prevent the pandemic, but to sustain themselves within that pandemic? What are some words of wisdom that you can give to our listeners?
Honestly, Giovanna, keep your faith high. So that means start building your faith today.
Mm-hmm.
Start doing everything that you can today to get your mindset together. Also, look to our elders, our elders, because I'm going to say something. We may think we're in the worst of times, but we're not.
Mm,
If we consider what our elders went through, I think more or less the baby boomer generation, if we look back at what all they lived through, you can gain a lot of strength and insight from who they were, and say, man, I need to be a person that has that same type of character, because they overcame a lot for us to be who we are in America today.
Right.
I'm talking about every color,
Right.
then 6 months of savings before you go into any business. 6 months of saving before you go into any business. Okay, then your risk management is something that I call it. Okay, if anything, what is the worst that can, so do a risk assessment. If
Okay.
the worst things happen, what are the worst things that can happen? And if these things do happen, what are my plans of action? Okay, so now if business if a pandemic happens and you're in this space, and you have to downsize, what does that look like for me if I have to downsize? What does it look like for me if I have to pay back a loan? What does it look like for me if I have to move in with my parents or roommate with my family? What does that look like for me if I have to bring somebody to live with me? What does that look like for me if there's a shortage of resources? So in my profession, we do something called risk assessment. And we do everything based on the high probability to the low probability. And what are all the courses of actions for those things that are higher up on the list?
Okay.
So ultimately, like you said, how do we prepare? You prepare. You prepare. So many people do not prepare for things. And if you
Right.
do not make a plan, you plan to fail. Let me say it again, just so you have it for the camera. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You ask the question, what can people do to prepare for if a pandemic happened again? The answer is prepare.
Right.
Prepare ahead of time.
Right, right. So prepare mentally. She said to prepare mentally. Make sure your faith is strong. Make sure your foundation is strong. Make sure you have about 6 months of saving. Make sure you're calculating all your risk. What will happen if, you know, you don't have any resources? What would happen if you have to move in with your friends or have a roommate? All these things are amazing ways for you to consider what can happen to your business if, God forbid, another pandemic takes place. So I thank you for that wisdom. It's definitely beneficial for our listeners because we want to make sure that we're stable within our finances, within our business, within what we're doing if things get crazy. And like you said, we're not in the worst of times. There's a lot of resources out there. And I think it's just about, finding those resources for our business during this time.
Absolutely. Wow. I didn't know I had all that in me. I didn't know all that wisdom was in there.
It was really good. I think that your information was very, very beneficial. I thank you so much for sharing this, especially for our women. I mean, I don't know. There's so much controversy of, men have it harder and women have it harder, and we don't know. Everyone faces things differently, right?
Yeah. Can I say this? I love all my brothers out here in the business world, and every single man that I've met has been so instrumental in my life.
Mhm.
There has been times where if I was being slighted, men stood up for me. You get what I'm saying? And
Amazing.
so I appreciate men. They definitely have a different way of seeing things. They
Right.
definitely have a different way of doing things, but it's not bad. It's just different,
Right.
and I tell people it's very important that we have relationships with the opposite sex.
Yes.
It's
Thank you for
very
saying that.
important that we have healthy relationships with the opposite sex. Now, when you are around toxic men, they're just going to give you what toxic people give you.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But one thing that I believe at the end of the day, and I tell people this, if you don't work with me, your competition will.
Mm.
want your competition to work with me.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, for real. If you don't work with me, your competition will. And my last point is this, and I give this homework to a lot of people. The word attitude. If you add the numbers up based on where they fall in the alphabet, associate the number to it. And if you add those up, it equals 100%.
Mm.
Attitude determines altitude.
Okay.
You
That's
can shift, you can shift any situation. When you walk in any room, you can shift anything based on your attitude. You
mm.
can come into direct contact with a jerk, and just because who you are, that person's whole demeanor will shift.
Yep.
You can come in a room with someone who has a stereotype, and just because of you, that stereotype changes. The thoughts, they change. Don't be the person that enables the stereotype that
Yeah.
people have of your gender, your race, your religion,
Mm-hmm.
your country, where you grew up. Don't let that person continue to live with that stereotype after they come across you.
Right. I like that you say that. And that also kind of brings to mind like you are what you attract, right? You're attracting who you are. So if you're coming in with the mindset that, I'm a woman and I have it bad and men are going to treat me like crap, then you're going to start seeing that around you. But if you have the mindset of focusing on all things good, that's why I have this podcast where I'm coming in here and I'm favored and I'm blessed and I'm going to have, favor from both men and women and we're going to collab and we're going to network, then guess what's going to happen? Those are the opportunities that you're going to see. You're not going to see those who are judging you or stereotyping you, but you're going to see those who actually accept you. And so I think that's important. I like that you mentioned that because it brings in that factor where you have to come in with the right mindset, with the right attitude.
And don't waste your time trying to convince people who are not sold.
Mm.
This is what one thing I learned in public relations is that you're going to do better off with the group of the group of the public that's already for you. To convert somebody is very difficult.
Mm. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources. So what you want to do, like for example, when I talk about social media and things like that, stop worried about getting more following and bless those that you already have with value.
Yes.
Give them value, because it only takes one person to go rave about you, and it only takes a handful of people to go talk good about you,
Right.
or you start to see doors open for yourself. So
Right.
don't spend a lot of energy on trying to convince those who maybe don't want to work with women, don't want to work with people of a certain race, don't want to work with you because you're from a certain socioeconomic background. Don't stop wasting time with them.
Mm.
Because
That's
there's a
good.
lot of people out waiting for you, and they want to work with you.
Yes. That's good.
Yeah, give it a little time, send your emails out, you make your calls. It does take quite a few times, like win over to make a business deal, but at least know the person is showing interest in you.
Mm.
Somebody may not say, okay, I'm ready to write a check today, but at
Yeah.
least they're being kind. They're asking you to provide more information. They want to know a little bit more, and they say, oh, can you follow up with me in a month? Can you follow up with me in 2 months? You get what I'm saying? They're leading you into the opportunity.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah, overall, don't waste your time on people who are not sold on.
I like that. I like that. Focus on those who are. Focus
Yeah.
on those who are willing. Lorraine, this has been amazing. You have given such valuable
Thank
information. I
you.
really appreciate it. I really know that my listeners are going to be blessed. Are there any last words that you want to say? How can we find you? How can we, follow you, share your information?
I'm so bad about that. I should have
I
said
know.
that early on. Okay. On all the social media platforms, I'm under Liberated Lorraine Kingcannon or Liberated Lorraine. And that is based on Luke 4:18. If you guys want to read that, you can. Also, I want to leave you with what Maya Angelou said, that it really speaks to my name, Liberated Lorraine. She said, love liberates, ego controls.
Mm.
When you're in any situation and you're finding it controlling, if you're finding, ego is in the midst, even your own ego,
Right.
it's not healthy. And so those are my words from the late Maya Angelou: love liberates and ego controls.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will be sharing a link to your Instagram, your Facebook, and a YouTube. If you have one, send me that link so I can go ahead and put that in the description of this video. Thank you so much, Lorraine. I hope you have a blessed day.
Thanks, Giovanna.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.